And this kind of came out of nowhere a little bit
Yeah.
with Kacy Rodgers, the Bucs defensive line coach. Golly, Matt, if there's one guy on the defensive staff that did a good job this year that we don't want fired, it's Kacy Rodgers. Don't lose, Kacy Rodgers. What are you doing?
Come on. Casey's been the glue that is, stuck together with this defensive coaching staff. So the news earlier was from Ian Rappaport of NFL.com that Rodgers is interviewing today. So there's a chance that it already happened. But Kacy Rodgers, not to be confused with Aaron Rodgers, but Kacy Rodgers was interviewing with the Green Bay Packers for the defensive line coaching position. So his contract is up in Tampa, meaning that he could technically go anywhere that he wanted to.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that, he's got a good gig here in Tampa Bay. He's not just the defensive line coach. He's also the co-defensive coordinator, run game coordinator, with Larry Foote being the passing game coordinator. And it also, I understand, Bucs fans, and let's remember, we gotta mix up the two, or we gotta separate the two, because when we say that the Bucs defensive coaching staff needs changes, we don't mean the defensive line.
That's
and
right.
I see some people on social media being like, see, like, we've wanted these changes. Now you're getting those changes. And that's true with cornerback and safety and outside linebacker. But Kacy Rodgers has been, and don't get me wrong, like, Vita Vea is extremely talented. Kalijah Kancey is extremely talented. They deserve their credit, their flowers for everything that they've done. But since Kacy Rodgers has been here, the Bucs have been one of the best run-stopping defenses in the league. They were fourth in the league this year, and they haven't even looked as good as they have been, 3 or 4 years prior. But they were still fourth best in the league in stopping the run. And by the way, on top of that, which is even more important in my opinion, is that somehow, it's important to the position group, the defensive tackles have become the premier pass rushers of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I know.
Kalijah Kancey, 7.5 sacks, led the team. Vita Vea, not far behind, with 7 sacks on the year. Logan Hall, we talked this last offseason, like a year ago from now, or prior.
Yeah.
We were talking about Logan Hall. He's probably not going to be back once his contract is done. And what did he do this year? He had a career high in tackles, had a career high in 5.5 sacks, and that tied him for third in on the Bucs with Levante David at 5.5. So
7 tackles, Matt. 7 tackles against the Commanders. I thought it was his best game. He had 5 solo tackles, hit career high 7 tackles in that playoff game.
So if you want to say Vita Vea and Kalijah Kancey, they're just all-world talents, sure, there's an argument to be made there. But Logan Hall, we were not saying the same thing about Logan Hall, and his development was on point this year. Kacy Rodgers deserves credit for that.
He does.
Why is everyone saying Kacy Rodgers should be gone when the defensive tackle room is the only room that really showed up on defense this year?
I know. I'm hoping because, listen, like I've said on yesterday's show, don't want to ruin anybody's Tuesday here, but Todd Bowles isn't going anywhere. The only way that this team would let him go is if the Blazers decided that they were going to lose Liam Cohen to Jacksonville, and they decided to pull a switcheroo and swap out Todd Bowles for Liam Cohen. And I don't know that that's going to happen. I don't. They like Todd Bowles. He's a leader of men. He's leveled up from 8 wins to 9 to 10. I'm not campaigning for Todd Bowles, nor am I saying he should be fired. I'm just stating facts. And if you're pro Bowles, you might not want to hear, or you might want to hear it. You might disagree with me. If you're anti-Bowles, you're like let's get rid of this guy. But the facts are he has taken his team from 8 to 9 to 10. There's a lot of warts in there too. We talked about yesterday about winning in week 18 the last 2 years for the division title. He hasn't blown any of these teams out. He even got swept by the Falcons this year. His Buccaneers did. So, having said all that, I just don't think that Todd Bowles is going to get fired. I put his chances of coming back at 90% yesterday, and I told you the only way that's not going to happen is if this team has a sudden change of heart. And I say team, I mean ownership. Has a sudden change of heart, and Liam Cohen does get an offer from Jacksonville, and they reconsider the coaching situation here in Tampa. I also said yesterday that I did not expect any coaching changes on the defensive side of the ball. And there's a chance that Kacy Rodgers, who is tight with Todd Bowles, Rodgers' contract is up right now. So he's a free agent. If I'm Kacy Rodgers, or if I'm Kacy Rodgers' agent, I'm going on any interview that I can. I know that the Buccaneers have already made him an offer to come back. I just think he's out there trying to get a better offer, right? Because when you have competition, it drives the ante up a little bit. So, if I'm Kacy Rodgers,
I think that's a good move. I think that's a good move from Kacy
I would
Rodgers.
do it in a heartbeat. Yeah.
Why not? Why not use something as a bargaining chip? And you know what? The Packers are a pretty good team too. I mean, they've gone the same length in the postseason the last 2 years, the same way that the Bucs have.
Yeah. Unfortunately for me, because I've called for these guys to get fired, and it's not going to happen. So maybe I'm wasting my breath. But George Edwards, outside linebackers coach, still under contract. Kevin Ross, cornerbacks coach, still under contract. Nick Rapone, safeties coach, still under contract. So not sure about Larry Foote, but I've said if Todd Bowles wants to keep his co-defensive coordinators, Larry Foote and Kacy Rodgers, I'm fine with that. But I think that they need some changes at the outside linebacker position and the two secondary coaches. But my last name is not Bowles, so I don't get to make that call.
Yeah, only a couple of people can, and I'm fine with giving Bowles another chance. I know a lot of people are unhappy about that, and whatever the case may be, they play in a bad division and all that stuff. But if there is a repeat of what happened this season from the defensive side, I don't know what argument you can make for either keeping those coaches on staff, continuing to call plays, and maybe even bringing him back. Because at that point, you have just been exploited for the last 2 years. You refuse to make any adjustments. The only adjustment you made is hypothetically having a new defensive tackle coach, defensive line coach, and only because the one you had decided to leave, not because you removed them. So that's really the only factor into, okay, why is this team struggling over the past couple of years? So I think it's not that he's a little bit on thin ice for sure with just how the defense went. You can't have that again and just be like, oh yeah, well, Todd's our guy. There's no way.
Yeah, no, I agree. And listen, if they didn't make the playoffs this year, had they lost to the Saints, I don't think he would be the head coach, right? Because he would be backed into the playoffs with 9 wins, and then you lose again in the playoffs. Like, let's say that scenario happened where they lost the Saints, they lost to the Commanders. Now you're 9 wins instead of 10 because they got that 10th win in the playoffs, and then you lost in the first round where you made the divisional playoffs. Then I think he would have been on thinner ice right there for sure. But didn't happen. He got the 10 and gets to keep his job.